Hi everybody, welcome to part 2 of the breakdown. Now welcome back everybody. We're continuing with this video. Unfortunately, with the amount of information I have to give you guys, it's making this video really long, so I ended up breaking it into 2 pieces. But we're going to continue with this video doing a breakdown where we left off last time. So let's get to it.
The other aspect is almost all these videos that are put out here to do with this long range taking a game. This game is killed with one shot, just smack, dab, drops right now in its tracks. Oh, really? 1,149 yards. With a bullet that doesn't even open, a bullet that has hardly...
Okay, I'm going to stop him right there just because, yes, you can drop him dead on the spot. It's called a CNS shot. His statement that a bullet won't open up, we've talked about that. It's a minimum impact velocity. The projectiles that he recommends are hunting style bullets like the partitions and stuff like that, and AccuBombs and different ones like that, and they have a higher minimum impact velocity. So with the bullets that he recommends, yes, you're not going to be taking those longer shots, but there's plenty of good bullets that will do it for you. So it's one of those things. The bullets work. Those videos you see, and I'm going to touch on this in a second, they're 100% legit. You can absolutely, with one of the 3 CNS shots, drop an animal dead on the spot.
No remaining energy to cleanly take game. Energy's been totally ignored. Figured out many years ago by people, experienced people such as myself, that we needed somewhere around 1,800, 2,000 foot-pounds energy to properly kill elk at long range. That's when we.
I love how he says that all those experts did it and him. But here's the thing. That is absolute crap. Guys like him will say, they'll look at a ballistic calculator and it says, hey, you have this X amount of energy. Let's say it says you have 2,200 foot-pounds of energy. That's not actually true. That is only a potential. It's directly dependent upon the bullet's performance. If that bullet is of harder construction and doesn't meet the necessary impact resistance, it's not going to open up and get that wide surface area transferring energy. So it's just one of those things that it's just a potential. A lot of people don't understand that. A prime example, I did some testing. It's episodes 1 and 4 of my ballistic testing, showing examples of this. I took a Barnes triple shock and an ELD match. Set them at the same distance, out of the same gun, same impact velocity, etc. The Barnes had a potential for around 2,400 foot-pounds of energy. It was impact velocity was 2,300 feet per second, and it barely did anything. Now, at the distance and that impact velocity, that is what a lot of people would say is good. It was at 200 yards out of a 308. Now, guys like this all the time tell me that is perfectly good. You've got over 2,000 foot-pounds of energy, and it'll do it at that distance. It's perfectly fine. Here's the thing, though. It wasn't delivering that. The Barnes had a small wound cavity, only 7/8 of an inch wide for the permanent wound cavity. Its temporary wound cavity, the transition of energy, was only 6 inches, roughly. So that is a lot smaller. The ELD match in the same situation out of the same gun literally sent the block flying about good 6 feet. It went back. It also picked up the entire table and moved it about 12 inches just from the amount of force that was transitioned into it. And it had twice the size of temporary wound cavity. It had around a 12-inch cavity, and the permanent wound cavity was 2 inches. So 2 different bullets, 2 drastically different performances. But where we get to this is when I did the next set of tests. I did the ELD match at 1,370 feet per second on a gel. Now, with that, we had an impact velocity of 1,370, and we had a potential energy transfer of 700 foot-pounds of energy. Now, we had a slightly larger permanent wound cavity at 1 1/8 inch at that low velocity, and the same size temporary wound cavity as the Barnes at the 2,300 feet per second. And so we got a larger permanent wound cavity, which means that bullet still opened up more at 1,370 than the Barnes did at 2,300 feet per second. But also the energy transfer was around the same. And so if we look at that, and here's the thing, the bullet doesn't lie. Gel doesn't lie. People do, but those don't. Those are what you're getting your factual data from, the slow motion, the measurements, all that. And so based off that, this very similar performance, that actually translates into our potential energy is somewhere between 600 and 700 foot-pounds of energy for that Barnes at 2,300 feet per second impact velocity. So does it actually achieve what that ballistic calculator says? No. So a lot of the times with the bullets he's dealing with, he's actually not getting that energy transfer that he thinks he is. And so he's actually wrong on that front. So he's actually getting, when he's shooting that animal, far less energy transfer than what he actually thinks he is, because that's what he saw in the ballistic calculator, and that's what he's basing it off. That was old school thinking. That is not the same thing as now. We have learned a lot moving forward, especially with bullets. That bullet, the expansion of that bullet, the design and the performance is what matters, especially when you're dealing with hydrostatic shock under 2,200 feet per second. Because your bullet is the main contributing factor. That is the main thing that's going to dictate your lethality at those lower velocities. If you're over 2,200 feet per second, you're dealing with hydraulic shock. Basically, you have a water-based mammal. When it hits, it's causing a displacement, kind of like when you drop something in water, there's a quick displacement of water and it collapses back. Well, under 2,200 feet per second, you have hydrostatic shock. That is that temporary wound cavity. What's going to happen is it's going to expand, collapse, and what you're left with is that permanent wound cavity. It's usually, and that permanent wound cavity is the size of the diameter of that bullet. So you're going to look around the same size that that bullet's expanded the max width for your permanent wound cavity. That's why, pistols are so much less lethal than rifles, and why bullet performance is really, really critical. Over 2,200 feet per second with proper performance, you're going to get that elasticity and you're going to stretch. But because of the amount of energy transfer that bullet hitting in the velocity, it's going to stretch it beyond the elasticity point of that media. And you're going to get into hydraulic shock, where you are now getting a wound cavity. Your temporary wound cavity is effectively becoming your permanent wound cavity. That's where you're going to see a massive temporary wound cavity that is much larger than the bullet itself. So you're going to have massive wounding. That's what you're getting with rifles. Now, over 2,200 feet per second, if you don't get good performance, you won't achieve that threshold. So it'll be the same thing as shooting the hydrostatic shock at the lower velocity, which is at 2,300 feet per second. That Barnes was not achieving that large cavity. In fact, it was performing very similar to an ELD match in just under 1,400 feet per second impact velocity in hydrostatic shock. So energy is way overthought. People really, really grabbed onto that idea of energy, and a lot of people are getting away from it now because they understand that is only one contributing factor. The bullet is what really matters. Energy is just a bonus. So if you can get that really good performance, that energy transfer, that's going to really aid you in putting that animal down very quick and effectively.
Felt that 400 or 500 yards was long range, and I still think that 400 or 500 yards is long range, and I don't think that anybody's got any reason shooting much past that at all.
Okay, I want to touch on his 500 yards is long range. Absolutely not true. If you look at precision shooters, that nobody thinks that's long range. That's mid-range at best. It depends on your weapon system. It also depends on the individual. But something I see with these guys is what happens is your rifle, like this rifle, is extremely accurate. And so what happens when you have a nice accurate rifle and you're at long range, you can actually make mistakes up close. And the accuracy of the rifle will compensate for it, basically. But you will reach a point where you're getting out to distance and those mistakes are magnifying to where the rifle's accuracy won't be able to compensate for your bad fundamentals and bad shooting. Now, the further out you go, what's going to happen is that rifle isn't going to compensate for you, and your accuracy is going to go to crap. This is what he's talking about. He might not realize it, but this is when I got guys that claim to be experts and everything, and they say, oh, well, you can't shoot past 400 or 500 yards. That's unethical. I can't do that. You know, you can't do that. That's not true at all. Now, that distance to dictate when they hit that point is going to depend on their skill set. He is very adamant about 500 and 600 yards in his videos, and that is where he tests his rifles out to, which tells me he's not capable past that, because he's shooting cartridges that are capable. His guns should be capable. But the fact he keeps harping on that, that is where he is getting away with those bad fundamentals and that bad shooting. And past that, the rifle is not able to do that anymore. His mistakes are magnified so largely. And that's where you're really going to, if you want to train, if you really want to identify your mistakes and see where they are, really push out to extended ranges, because the littlest thing is going to make a huge difference, and it's really going to have to make you focus more. Now, you should be focused on your fundamentals. You should be doing the same thing for 100 to 2,000 yards. If you're not, if you're slacking off and then, you know, you're just building bad fundamentals, bad practice, you want to be doing everything perfect every single time. But that's what this is. It's not that anything past that is hard or anything. It's hard for him. He does not have the capabilities to consistently shoot at those distances past that. And so he limits that both on that, and then also, like I mentioned, the bullets, the projectiles he's using, they won't expand at long range. They're not going to do it at those lower velocities. And so most likely that's where he's losing velocity enough to where he's losing that bullet's performing potential. If he had a different bullet and was actually capable of shooting past that consistently, he would be much more effective downrange at longer distances.
These videos that you're seeing put on by these stepped right out of the shower, cold shower experts, green as grass. You pay attention. Look at that video. It's been taken back to the shop and it's been doctored. Perhaps that elk was shot 7 times, 12 times, 14, 15 times.
Okay, I'm going to stop him right there, because no, we're not altering our videos. Do we go and edit our videos so we're cutting out, you know, hours and hours of filming? Yes. We're not CGI experts. We're not sitting there. Even Hollywood, there's a great part in Hunger Games, one of the Hunger Games movies, where it's one of the later ones, she's hunting an elk. And they did a really good job, but you can tell still it's a CGI elk. So, I mean, there's no way that we can alter this. We don't have, you know, all that equipment to do it. We have basic editing programs and stuff to make, you know, magic like that to where there's nothing done. Now, what he said is ridiculous, and it's something that I hear all the time. So basically what happens, these guys say it's impossible. And then what happens? They see a video that proves them wrong. Factual data. The bullet doesn't lie. And all of a sudden they're in the hot seat of, he just proved me wrong. So what is he going to do? They're going to try to discredit the individual. I see it all the time. They're going to be like, oh, well, you didn't see how many he missed prior to that, how many shots he missed, how many animals he wounded before that. Or what he's trying to say, oh, well, what you don't know is they edited, that animal was really shot 4, 8, 14, 16, 17 times. Whatever he said. Seriously? No. This is actual long-range cavities. This is the damage. These are the bullet holes from long-range shots, from everything from a 224 Valkyrie up to a 300 PRC. You're going to see that those, you can tell when it's hit. So to think that that thing was shot all those times, that it was shot multiple times, and you're not going to be able to tell when they walk up to an elk or a deer and you look, that thing would look like Swiss cheese if you're using the bullets that we do, and it would just be shredded. I mean, even if you say, oh, well, you missed a bunch. I've seen one case, one single case in my entire time of an animal that stood there for more than a few shots. In fact, a lot of times when one animal gets shot, the other ones take off, they book it. Or even if a shot is missed, they're going to take off and book it. They're going to get out of that threat area, that fight or flight response, that survival kicks in, and they are out of there. So what he's claiming is beyond ridiculous, but it's just to make hunters look bad because they don't have a valid argument. That animal, he says it can't happen. It happens all the time. It is something that really does. And pay attention. He wants you to pay attention. Pay attention to this. When you watch these videos, you're going to see a healthy animal. It's sitting there, it's eating, there's no holes in it, it's not limping, there's nothing, blood coming out, there is nothing wrong with it. Then you see a single shot, you watch the trace go in, and that animal folds like an accordion. That is all real. Happens all the time. You have what's called CNS shots, and that stands for the central nervous system. You have the head, which you can completely destroy, and that, again, there's no signals going to the body, it's going to drop dead. You have the neck, which coming from the back of the head down, you have a brain stem inside that neck bone. If you sever that brain stem, guess what's going to happen? Signals of the brain are cut, body drops, dead before it hits the ground. Or the long-range favorite, my favorite, is a high shoulder shot. Now, between the two shoulder blades, you have a bundle of nerves called the brachial plexus. And what this is you have the brainstem that comes from the deer's head down through the neck and into the spine, and inside the spine there's a bundle of nerves there that carry the signals to the body. So they're going to disperse from there, and what's going to happen is that's what's going to communicate with the body. If it wants to walk, move its leg, that's what happens. And so when you hit that high shoulder shot, you are destroying that brachial plexus, and it's going to cut signals to the brain. You're also going to have massive trauma inside the chest cavity. This is a whitetail I shot last year with this. This is a 6 Creedmoor shooting a 110 A-tip, and you can see the shot here, drops dead on the spot. Everything books it for cover, and I'm going to show you now the actual wound. So you can see inside this chest cavity, it turned it to soup. It had enough transition of energy and performance not only to blow completely through and drop that deer dead on the spot, but it vaporized that chest cavity and turned it into mush. It's puree at this point. And so that thing, even if it didn't drop, which of course it's going to, but it's not going anywhere the chest cavity that looks like that. I mean, it's just not. And you can even do it if you have a large enough energy transfer. This is a buddy's deer at 926 yards with a 300 PRC with a 215 Burger hybrid. The entire chest cavity was vaporized and blown out that exit hole. You know, this one I just showed you, this is with a 224 Valkyrie with a 80 grain ELD match at 465 yards. That's his daughter, and his daughter has killed multiple deer with that past 700 yards, and she's never lost one. So it's perfectly capable. Shoulder shots will drop them. These guys, again, they're trying to just make up stuff to make us look bad because they're getting physical evidence. Oh, well, they edited it. They're not showing you this. They're not showing you that. No, we are highly picky with our shots. We're like any other hunter. We're not out there doing anything crazy. We archery hunt, we do all that. I have never gotten down on a gun and saying, hey, I'm just going to see what happens. We train religiously. Everything from the best equipment, ballistic programs, true in our data, everything. We spend a crazy amount of time in the off season. I dry fire daily, just working on everything to make sure that we are ready when we get in that position and we have that shot. If we're capable and it's a good shot, we're going to shoot. If not, we're going to just pass. We're going to either try to get closer or see if we can get somewhere else and find another animal. But we're not out there just doing that. That's one of the things that's not really talked about a lot is how many shots we actually pass. And generally speaking, we're going to see them a lot further out than what we actually shoot. That mule deer in Idaho I referenced, that was 715 yards. We spotted it, my buddy did, at around 1,500 yards, and we closed the distance to 715 yards for that shot.
Shot at that many times, perhaps hit once or twice. Maybe they were able to work in on it at 75 yards and finish it off.
Now, this is something that really isn't going to happen. If I can hit it and take that animal down right there, it's not getting up. If I see that it potentially could and I want to put another round, I can just do it from that same distance. I don't have to try to sneak up. And honestly, again, if it's got multiple holes, you're going to be able to tell. So he's just theorizing at this point. He's creating theories which aren't based in facts. Now, I have seen guys with bad bullets, and that's more at closer range, or if somebody makes a bad shot, then they have to go in and put it down. But that's usually because they're not capable of the shot they took, or, generally it's close range. I've never really seen anybody in the long range game that's had to stock up to one after they've shot it. Unless, it really doesn't happen.
They don't show you that. That's really what's happening. These one-shot long-range, extreme long-range kills, 99 and 9/10% of it is nothing but a lie.
Now, I love that he's saying that's a lie. Well, there's video evidence that it's not, but here's the other thing. If you go back to part 1, he claims that there were guys that he reveres that were doing it at a mile with their Benchrest rifles. So he's saying that those guys can do it, but regular long-range guys can't. So, he's completely contradicting himself and being a hypocrite because he's trying to say it's okay for one, but not okay for the other. Because again, he said these guys were out there at a mile and they've never not recovered an animal. For somebody who knows what it actually takes to shoot at a mile, I call BS on that. He said some of those rifles are 125 pounds. Nobody's going hunting with a 125-pound rifle. Most people don't want to pack something like this around, let alone 125 pounds. So what he's saying is completely and utterly false. It's funny to me that he says this because my son is a kid and he's dropped them. If you know what you're doing, if you actually understand anatomy, bullets and all that, and you can place it, then you can do it. All right, a good example is this is a deer my son shot 2 years ago in Tennessee. That's 630 yards with a 308 with a 168 grain ELD match. Now that is a nice hole. You can see it caused a lot of trauma. It died right there. Hit an impact velocity around 1,600 feet per second. So he had a low impact velocity. It did everything it needed to. It caused massive trauma. You can see that hole, that's from that projectile. So it definitely did open up. So what he's saying is false. I shot 3 deer there in 40 minutes at 645 yards with that 308. I did 541 and then another one at 552 yards. So 3 deer, all recovered, all single shot engagements, all dead right there. It was drive up to them and grab them. So it really wasn't that difficult. And then he did that at 630 yards. To even put long range more into perspective, when you know what you're doing, we took him out prior to that hunt, me and a buddy on my buddy's 6 Creedmoor. That's before I had one. And Junior got first round impacts on every single target from 400 to 1,000 yards. And he started at 1,000 and then worked back. So his first shot was 1,000 yards and he made that. Then he went out and did the 1,200 and he missed it by that much. He literally skimmed the top of it, second shot perfectly on there. So he got 100% from 400 to 1,000 and he was 8 years old at the time. So, it's really not that difficult. If you have the equipment, the knowledge, and you can apply that, read the wind, all that, it's really not as hard as people think. And a kid can do it.
There's nothing but a lie. Is that who you want to buy a rifle from? Somebody that's going to lie to you? He's going to lie to you producing this video.
Now, I find this highly ironic because he's currently lying about this right now. He said several lies in this video, yet he's sitting there, oh, they're lying. Well, no, we're really not. We're doing it. There's video footage of it. He's the one that is trying to deceive people, both himself and others. So it's kind of ironic and hypocritical that he's doing that right now. So, I don't know, give me a little bit of a laugh.
not being honest to himself or to the shooting world, and being unethical, using unethical practices to take game.
Now, I find this even funnier. It's not that ethics is a joking matter, but we as long-range shooters strive for excellence. We strive for a perfect shot, and that applies across the board. I don't just mess around with, archery and just say whatever. I use the best arrows I can find. I use the best broadheads I can find to put that animal down. I use the best bow I can. I've got a Hoyt. I spend the money where I need to and pick up what I need to be lethal. I only take shots inside my capabilities. Same thing with the rifle. Practice year-round with both. It's one of those things that ethics, a lot of people try to weaponize it. They're trying to make it a negative thing and try to say, oh, you did something that I can't do or I don't like. That's unethical. Ethics is simple. It doesn't matter the weapon. It doesn't matter any of that. You could be using a spear. As long as you are capable of the shot, you stay within your limitations with the result of a quick, clean kill, and that is your goal, you're being ethical. Plain and simple. So what he's saying is completely wrong. I am more lethal and ethical at 800 yards than most people are within 100 yards. There is a ton. If you want to check on this, go to Facebook groups for hunting. See who is asking for tracking dogs. See who is asking if this is good blood, etc., etc. It's not going to be the long-range hunters. And it's not that they're not telling people. It just really doesn't happen. Do we talk about when there is the occasional miss? Yes. It just doesn't happen that often. We work so hard. And if we miss at that distance, that means a very long track down there. If, we are a little bit off, if we wound an animal, we've got to go clear down and find it. So we don't want to deal with that. We're not going to. So if there's anything uncomfortable, we're not taking that shot. And it's another thing I find ironic is there is a double standard. So if a long-range shooter misses a shot, oh, you're unethical. You were doing too much. You couldn't do that. But then a guy that's archery hunting can miss a deer, and they say, oh, you know what? Don't worry about it, bud. You get him next time. It's a clean miss. That's what counts. You're good. It's just hunting. So there's a complete double standard there. It's really strange the way they do that, especially since this, if you want to look at the lethality of it, this is much more lethal than a bow and arrow. But let's continue with his current rant.
This game deserves better. We've had a tremendous amount of predation on all aspects of our wildlife in this part of Wyoming. Now we got the two-legged varmint pulling the same sort of stunts. They don't care as long as people swallow these.
He sure likes saying lies. But the fact that we don't care is a load. We care just as much as any other hunter. We do the same things as any other hunter. We're just simply using a different method. Instead of hunting from a tree stand at close range with a rifle or a bow, we're out, in the woods. We're either in a ground blind or some other type of setup, or we're in the mountains. Whatever we're end up doing, if we're glassing from a mountainside or whatever we're doing, we have the same respect for animals. We're constantly learning, training, comparing. In my group, we study animals from around the world. Everybody sends in that data, those photos, everything, the bullet specs, impact velocity, all that, and we study it to become better. We study it to compare. We do ballistics gel testing. We do this to learn and compare bullets and show that, okay, this bullet's going to do this is its limitations. So we spend a lot of time and energy making sure we're doing it right. So to say we don't care is completely and utterly wrong. So yeah, and again, it's ironic that he is trying to claim people are lying, arguing against actual evidence while he's lying about us doing stuff.
These lies after lies after lies being produced on film, that we're doing this or that we're doing that.
He knows better.
We did that. I know better. I have an extreme amount of experience shooting game. People that are doing these things would have to live my whole lifetime.
It comes back to him and Mr. Ego, which is ironic because, again, he tries to say that we are ego-driven. But yet he's the one that calls himself the real gunsmith. He's the one that says, oh, if I can't do it, you can't. You would have to have my lifetime experience. No. I know people that have been shooting for 2 years that have more experience than this guy at actually taking game and more knowledge than this guy. I mean, I know guys, there's a kid in the PRS circuit that a buddy of mine trained. He's kind of his protege. This kid is dominating. I mean, within the first year, he's been doing it a couple years now, and he is dominating in there. There are plenty of kids that are teenagers coming into the PRS scene and all that, and they're not getting any bad habits or bad information. They're being taught right from the beginning, and then they apply it. And these kids are straight up lethal. And so to say that it can't be done if you're not his age and his experience, well, based on what I've seen, his experience doesn't really come up to anything. I mean, it's one of those things, he's gotten a lot of stuff wrong, and everything he says just points to him not knowing. There's certain indicators you'll see, and there's some coming up that I'll point out on why I believe all this stuff.
To have the experience that I've got shooting game, to shooting game from reasonable distances right up close to fairly long distance. I build rifles capable in the accuracy department of taking game under perfect ideal conditions at reasonably long range.
Now, did you hear what he said? He said in perfect conditions. That's another one, those indicators that he doesn't know what he's talking about. He didn't say it's capable of taking game at, whatever distance. He didn't say it's a 1,000-yard gun. It can do that, which if he's building these long-range rigs or rigs that can do that, they should be going to 1,000 yards. I mean, unless he's shooting a 22, most cartridges he's loading for or these guys are getting are more than capable at 1,000 yards of shooting that far. But he says in perfect conditions.
And I think 500 or 600 yards is reasonably long range. I don't think anything past that should even be attempted. And it proves that it shouldn't be attempted, because I know for an absolute fact that these films that you're seeing are being doctored.
He knows for a fact that they're being doctored. No, he doesn't. He doesn't go and oversee the people editing their footage. He has no idea. It's not a fact. But he's also saying, you can't do it past 500. That is his limitation.
To show you exactly what they want you to see, to try to sell you on that long range package that doesn't shoot worth a damn to begin with.
Now see this again? His guns are accurate. All other precision rifles are crap. Not so much. This is 3 groups from when I was doing low development on this rifle at 100 yards. If you want to see what these things are really capable of, let's take this 6 Creed. This was in Oklahoma last year prior to my hunt. I went out to verify data, true my ballistics and my ballistic calculator here. And once it was trued, after a couple shots, I took this and went on different distances and doing very precise shooting, either headshots or small targets. So I'll let you watch that real quick. And all of these are single shot engagements. So you can see that I went out clear out to 1,200 yards on a 10-inch plate. doing headshots at 600, 650. These rifles are extremely accurate. This rifle is absolutely stupid accurate. And that's something a lot of people don't realize. These weapon systems, we are the weak link. These are far more accurate than we will ever be because we induce errors. And so if you look at like the U.S. Army Marksmanship Unit, when they're actually testing rifles, they don't use a human. They actually have a special setup that allows the rifle to freely recoil for when they're testing it to see what the rifle is capable of without any influence of the shooter. And so with that rifle recoiling naturally, they can test that. So these things are far more accurate. For him to say that his rifles are the only ones that can do it and everybody else's doesn't shoot for a damn, that's completely false. I help a lot of people. I teach people precision shooting. I help people daily on getting equipment and everything, load development. And there are a lot of absolute tack drivers, even in factory rifles. And I think that's part of this, personally. With the rise of all these experts coming back from theater or the competition shooters and the companies actually incorporating them and doing that research and bettering products, he's becoming obsolete with his custom rifles. People can spend thousands with him, or they can go pick up a full rifle package, a factory rifle like Bergara, that'll shoot half MOA all day long. And it'll hold accuracy out to long range when you have the right load. So I really think that's part of it, why he's trying to attack the rest and say they aren't capable, because ultimately that can put him out of business.
Is not capable, and under conditions that all of us are going to encounter, irregardless of where we're at shooting. We've had wind blowing for a solid 3 weeks. I have not been able to do any type of shooting for over 3 weeks here where I live.
Indicator, indicator, indicator. This, if you hear somebody say this type of thing, that is an automatic red flag that they do not know what they're talking about. And this is a collective thing, but this is one big one. One, they're going to say that, oh, you can't shoot past this distance. You get that a lot. I see guys that say, oh, well, I'm taking game all the time. You can't shoot a 300 Win Mag on game past 250. Heard that a lot. Not even true. But the wind, this tells me he doesn't know how to call wind. He has no actual training, any formal training. The same thing that he claims other people don't. And the reason I say this is because he doesn't know how to call wind. There is always wind. I have never in my entire life, or anybody else I know for that matter, ever had a hunting shot where there wasn't wind. You're always going to have wind. You need to learn how to call wind. And once you learn, it's actually not that difficult. It takes practice. It takes, the effort. But guys that don't know how, they find it a waste because they want, like he said, in perfect conditions. So he's waiting for perfect conditions so that he can shoot, because that wind, it's going to cut the distance of what he can get away with those mistakes being magnified for one reason. But also he's not going to be able to hit anything because he doesn't know how to shoot. We never stop. I've shot animals. Here's one. This was a stag hunt I was on. Now that was a single shot engagement with witnesses. I shot that 40-mile-an-hour winds. It dropped dead on the spot with my 300 at 455 yards. Later that day, I ended up getting on another one, and I dropped that one at 530 yards in 40-mile-an-hour winds. How do I do that? Because I know how to read the wind. Something a lot of people don't realize, this ballistic calculator does everything for you. So once you true your data, what your bullet's actually doing, all you got to do is be able to identify the wind and the direction, punch it in, and it'll tell you exactly what your hold or adjustment will be. And so all you have to do is do that. Now this is a good tool to get the wind at your location. You still have to get downrange, but this will tell you exactly what you need to adjust for elevation and for windage. Oklahoma is very, very windy. In fact, Badlands, where I trained, the most wind they've ever had in a class is 50 miles an hour. I was in a class with 40 miles an hour. I was coming back from my third deployment. My brother, one of my younger brothers, two of them are cops, this is one of the cop ones, he was going out there to go through their sniper course. I went down with him, as his spotter. And during that class, when I was his spotter, we were shooting 308s and had to qualify. We're on the 1K or the 1,000 yard range. We had to qualify in 40 mile an hour winds, and we had to shoot certain size targets with 5 rounds. So you had to be able to hit with a certain amount of accuracy on that. So you had to get 4 out of 5 on all of them, and we all qualified. In fact, my brother and myself never missed a shot, and we were inside good accuracy. So as soon as you can identify that wind and direction, as long as you can actually do it, and then all you have to do is just apply either running a formula or using your ballistic calculator and go through your fundamentals, and you're going to hit. If your dope is right, which is data on previous engagements, that's just referring to what we're going to adjust or hold. As long as that's on, you're going to impact.
There's wind all over, wherever you're at hunting. It may show to be dead still where you're at.
Real quick before we get to this next part, he also said in perfect conditions, this guy won't shoot if there's no wind. This is actually unethical, because if he's taking game at those western distances of 300 to 500 yards, and he's not practicing in the wind, he's not going out there and learning it, that means he is taking unethical shots. Because if he's attempting shots at 500 yards and he is in wind and he hasn't practiced and he doesn't know how to do it, that is actually unethical.
But out there at 500, 600, 700, 800 yards or whatever the distance is, let's say that there's some elk working their way around the peak of a mountain. Well, right there is an ideal spot for wind currents. There's not a wind, but there's wind currents. Those wind currents.
Now, let's cover the stupidity of this comment. There is no wind, but there's a wind current. What he just said contradicts himself. That's like saying, look, there's a dry creek bed. There's no water in it. But look, a water current. There has to be water flowing in there to be a water current. Same thing with wind. If you have no wind, there is no wind current because there is no wind. So it boggles me that he would say something so dumb when he's trying to call other people out and he's trying to attempt to make them look bad, and then he says something as dumb as that. But that again supports the fact that he doesn't understand what he's talking about when he talks about wind.
Are going to dictate a wounded animal. And you don't know whether that wind current is going left or you don't know whether it's going right, because there's not anything out there in this so-called sophisticated shooting world. You're going to pull out your app that's going to tell you that there's a wind current out there that it can't detect in the first place?
Okay, so to address this stupidity again, there is nothing in all this technology and apps and anything that can tell you what happens downrange for wind. Well, let me think about this. How do snipers evaluate wind downrange? How do long-range shooters do it? How do hunters do it? There is stuff. One, this is going to tell you at your location. Two, once you assess the wind downrange, you're going to input it into here. How you assess it, there is tons of ways. We are looking at different things. First off, mirage. The mirage is going to tell us the wind speed based on how it's going. Is it going in a boil? Is it going at a 45? Is it flat? Is it really wavy, or is it more streamlined? So we're going to look at that. It can also tell us when you're going to see a change in direction. And so it's going to tell you the direction of it. It's going to tell you all of that. Now, we also have other indicators. What do animals have? Hair. Guess what? Hair. Hair blows. If you look at the picture of the stag in the 40 mile an hour winds, you can see that my beard is doing this. That's a 40 mile an hour wind. I mean, it was whipping my beard straight. Hair moves. So you have those animals down there that you're going to see that hair move if you have a good optic. You're looking at things like vegetation. How is the grass moving? You have bushes. You have trees. At what mile per hour you're going to see that as, you're going to see certain things. Large trees at 15 to 20 miles an hour are going to be blowing. So you can look at the vegetation, how it's blowing. Is it coming slightly towards you at a half value? Is it coming at a no value towards you or away from you? Is it coming straight side to side? where you're dealing with a full value wind. And so the vegetation from the grass, the leaves, the trees, bushes, all that is an indicator of what the wind is doing. You also have things like debris. At a certain mile per hour speed, debris is going to come up, dirt, etc. And so if wind's kicking up, it's going to kick up dirt, all kinds of stuff. You're going to see leaves coming off, especially if you're hunting in the fall. You can see a lot of things. How is that leaf falling? Is it coming straight down, or is it coming down at an angle, or is it really whipping off? So there's a lot of different indicators there. Even wildlife, birds. If you're shooting across a mountain, hawks, predatory birds like to be there. How are they gliding? Are they having to really get at it, or are they just simply sitting there and cruising in the wind? You can study those things. You can see how a bird flies. If there's a bird in a tree next to that animal, you can see how that bird flies and see what the wind's doing. Wind is like water. It's going to flow. So if you're having wind come over, it's going to drop down into a valley and it's going to come up. So there's going to be parts where it's going to speed up, where it's going to slow down. So it works like water. So if you want to look at what the wind's doing, you're going to watch those terrain features and you can tell what that wind is doing. And so there's tons and tons of indicators on what the wind is doing. And we do that by observing through our spotting scope or binoculars or even our rifle scope. So to say that there's no way to do this is completely and utterly a lie and false. Once we identify what the wind speed is and the wind's direction, again, either you're going to do a formula, or if you know your gun, you can just basically put it on. I don't have to run a formula. I can sit there and do it in my head at this point. Or you can insert it into your ballistic calculator and shoot, and you can watch those things. If the wind changes directions, you can see it and you can reassess on the fly. You know, when you are experienced in shooting, especially in wind, you're not going to be like an amateur. An amateur is either not going to shoot, they're going to call it a waste of ammo, or they're going to wait for the wind to be perfect. They're going to wait for a lull. They're going to wait for a high point. They're going to try to do that. When you're an advanced shooter, you're shooting throughout all of it. You don't have time to sit there. And so you actually are adjusting. So you're going to see the low point, the mid, and you're actually adjusting for that in your scope. And so if I'm holding, as that wind is changing, I am changing until I'm ready to break that shot, and I break it. So it's one of those things that I'm not having to wait for a perfect one. It's like when we were at Badlands and we were training, when we did those qualification stuff, we were never waiting for a perfect wind. We were having to assess on the spot and engage. So you can absolutely tell what's going on downrange. You can absolutely do that. That technology is that spotting scope. You get that good quality, you're going to see, you can see what the wind's doing. And a tip for you guys, if you're looking at the ground, it's going to be slightly slower. You're going to meet a little bit of resistance. So you're going to add about a mile per hour if you're going a little bit higher than that. So when you get off the ground, if you're looking at grass for your vegetation, add 1 mile per hour to that for going above the grass, because you're going to get that little bit of resistance that's going to slow it down on the grass.
There's nothing. There's not one thing.
Nothing.
That's going to tell you what's happening. And since you don't know, you have no idea, you shouldn't be pulling the trigger in the first place. Most of our game, honestly, is taken inside of 300 yards. Probably even half of that, a lot of it. And
yeah, 300 to 500 yards is a normal shot in Wyoming, Idaho, those areas. I was born in Montana, raised in Idaho. I've been hunting the Northwest for most of my life, ever since I was a kid. So, I mean, yeah, it has longer shots. It's open terrain, but I mean, that's the average shot is 300 to 500. It's a long range paradise. You can shoot even further if you need. But yeah, are there a lot of people that are taking them inside 300 yards? Yeah. But does that mean that it's unethical to take them further? No. What most people do doesn't really matter, because everybody has different skill sets and equipment. So the guy that has a $300 rifle that he bought, you know, a little Simmons scope on it, is not going to be set up to be shooting game at long range. And that's the majority of hunters. They're not running the kind of equipment we are. And so if you look at that, yeah, the majority are taking them at shorter distances. But the majority of those guys go to a range prior to hunting season. It's scary. A lot of those guys cannot shoot.
I think that people need to pay attention. Pay attention to what is really happening here. Think about it in your own mind. Think about it in your own mind. This is not hunting.
So apparently that's not hunting, because he dictates what hunting is, right? He's God. He's the real gunsmith. Hunting is hunting. It doesn't matter. It's the pursuit of game. There's no, oh, well, if you use this weapon or if you shoot at this certain distance, it's not hunting. No, that's crap. We are all in the same woods. I hunt the same places I bow hunt with a rifle. We're all in the same woods. The difference is the capabilities of the hunter themselves. So to say it's not hunting is ridiculous.
Shooting something at 1,000, 11, 1,200 yards. I've even heard of some of these folks that claim to be these long-range experts locate something at 450, 500 yards and back off 500 yards to shoot at it.
That is one of my favorites, and it is the stupidest thing. Think about this. Nobody does this. Nobody. Imagine you're packing this heavy rifle around, or your long-range rig. You've got all your gear on. You're chasing elk. You've been at it for days. Your legs are sore. Your muscles are. You are putting in all that work. You're going 10, 12 hours a day, and you see a nice, easy 450-yard shot. You got a nice bull there, and you go, you know what? I'm going to make life hell. I am going to potentially lose this shot, go 500 yards, shoot, if and only if it's still there and I can get a shot, shoot with, that is if I did all this without being detected, shoot that animal, then I've got to come all the way back to where I originally was, continue forward, get that animal, break it down, and start the packing process out. Nobody is going to do that. That is beyond ridiculous. A prime example is, if you look at the first breakdown I did, it's a guy that shot an elk at 875 yards. I'm going to play a little clip of that real quick, where he actually shot his, and then later sees some elk closer, and he even states, he's like, man, I wish I'd known those were there.
Just took a shot at 875 yards, burger VLDs. Wow. And it's down. Let's show you. What's that? Oh my gosh, I didn't even see those across the way. That would have been an easier hike out.
That is reality. It actually happens a lot. People have this illusion that the animal you're looking at is the only one there. No, you're surrounded by animals. I guarantee you, and I know personally, I don't care if I've got a bull at 800 yards and a bull walks in at 300 yards, I'm taking that 300-yard shot. Why? It's an easier shot. 2, it's going to be an easier recovery and pack out. We're not trying to make things extra hard on ourselves or try to get extra distance. The only time that we ever move in a backwards direction is to get a better shot. Referring to my 715-yard shot on that mule deer. That was the case where we started around 1,500 yards. We came into 700 yards, but it was really steep and I couldn't get a really good position. Whereas a little bit up and back, there was a nice flat spot, and so we moved up and back, and it ended up being 715 yards. So I only went back 15 yards, but it allowed me to lay prone and get a nice, clear, stable shot. And it died right there. It never moved. It still had the food in its mouth. It stopped chewing. It literally folded. It was an instant death. So it's one of those things, it was quick, it was clean. That was with a 308 also. But that's the reason we move. It has to do with position. If I can get a more stable position and it's 20, 30 yards more, sure, I'm going to do that, because that increases my probability of getting a good solid hit. If you can't get in a good position, you're not going to take the shot. That's just plain and simple. If there was no other place to take that shot, and we were in a burn area, so it's really, really remote, and there's not really any cover or concealment, if I couldn't have gotten a position on that, we would have attempted to get closer or even go around and try to get a better position playing that wind. And if it never came down to it, it would just be a complete pass and we'd go look for another animal. That's just simply what happens. We're not going to sit there and jeopardize our hunt or cause extra pain on ourselves. That's like drag racing. You going up against your competition on that quarter mile and you saying, you know what, guy, you start first, just go ahead and I'm going to back up all the way past into the pit. Then I'm going to slowly pull up and then take off while giving you a head start. Nobody's going to do that. That would be stupid. Same concept. We're not doing that. That is beyond ridiculous. It's one of those things that, just like editing the footage, or you're going to shoot multiple times, or out there wounding animals, etc. It's all just make believe in order to try to cast doubt and cause. It's just done to make us look bad, and it's complete lies. I mean, use some common sense, people. Seriously, would you do that? No, neither will I.
This is nothing short of insanity, and it's driven by ego. They don't care. They don't care anything about the wildlife.
Yeah, we don't care at all. We just spend all this time and money training and doing all that, stuff, and we just don't care. It's just ego driven. It's not that we're just hunters and we're enjoying it. We're using a different method and we still respect the animals. No, it's ego from the guy that calls himself the real gunsmith, and he's the only guy that can make a rifle that way. Or if you can't do it, he can. It's impossible and you're unethical.
I know that there's game that's never been recovered. Dozens of bighorn sheep have been recovered in this part of Wyoming, being shot at by the long range.
Now, let's go with common sense again. How does he know this? He doesn't. He's making theories. How does he know this? Is he on those hunts? No, he's not on those hunts. He's not going on those guys. And you have just as much with a lot of these guys. They're going to wound them up close. They really are, because they're going to feel more confident with that shot because it's up close. A lot of people rush shots. They don't take the time. I am never rushing a shot at long range. Every single time, if I can't get it perfect, I ain't taking it. And we've ironed all that out in training. That's why we train so hard. People do competitive shooting in alternate positions like PRS to train and prep, and we're changing equipment constantly. So how does he know this? He doesn't. He's just making theories. Oh, there's all these wounded animals. Oh, all these bighorn sheep are wounded and lost. How does he know that? He doesn't.
Fraternity. This is not right.
Not right.
This is not acceptable. Pointing out the bighorn sheep because it's such a majestic animal, and you maybe only draw a tag in once in a lifetime.
He does that a lot. He always says, oh, these majestic animals. The ironic part is he's claimed that, because he's been called out before, he claims that he's made long-range shots, and that's how he knows. So, again, hypocritical.
I've drawn 2 tags in 50 years. That's how hard it was. I wouldn't think of trying to shoot at a bighorn ram at 700, 800, 900, 1100 yards.
He would not think about doing it. Yeah, because he's not capable of it. That is his limitations. As long as he stays within his limitations, guess what? That's ethics. But he is not capable, and everything in this video, from not knowing about wind, how it works, that you can't judge wind at distance. He claims to test his rifles out to distance. Well, again, there's always wind, so how is he doing that? If he's making kills at 500 yards, and that's how he knows, how is he doing that? I mean, you listen to what he's actually saying and you look past it and study everything in, a spectrum of things, especially when you know what you're talking about. He's absolutely full of it.
I think about 400 yards is a hell of a long poke to shoot at a bighorn ram. Very experienced people that guide an outfit tell me that they can put their hunters inside of 250 yards on any game that they're guiding their hunters for. And if that's the aspect, you see, we've got outfitters that simply won't let you hunt with them if you've got one of these so-called long-range rifles with these big high-power.
Yeah. I don't know of any outfitter that's going to turn a client away because of the rifle they carry. Whether it's you know, a rifle that's used for long range or short. I don't know of anybody that's going to do it. I've hunted with guides before. I know a lot of guides. I don't know of a single one that's going to do that. And I don't know who he's talking to. Honestly, he's probably talking with somebody that is like-minded of him that doesn't like long range, if he is. He also claims to have talked to snipers and they laugh at long range hunting. No, I seriously doubt that. But yeah, I don't know of a single guide that's going to say that. Oh, you can't do it. Now, can a guide get you in a couple hundred yards? Yeah, sure. But that doesn't really change anything.
Scopes, too much power. You can't even find the game in the scope because the scope's turned up to too high a power. There's just no end to problems here.
No end to problems? You can't find game in a scope because it's too high? Okay, I want you guys to watch this. This is super top secret. This is the secret squirrel stuff. Navy SEALs, all that fun jazz. Delta. Your magnification's too high, so you have a smaller field of view. Oh my God. Turn it down. Now you have a larger field of view. But remember, that's top secret. That's secret squirrel stuff. You know, even he doesn't know about that. You know, these high-powered scopes that we use so we can see really well and have good quality glass and be able to see at those longer ranges to identify our animal, to, you know, identify what's behind it and make those shots on these expensive, like this is a $4,000 scope. But we can't do that, remember? We cannot utilize these great scopes because it's too high and there's nothing, there are constant problems. There's nothing we can do about the magnification. It has to stay on that maximum setting with that small field of view. Now you can see even with the max you can get on it. Is it harder? Yes, but honestly, turn it down, and quality of glass matters more than magnification. The higher the magnification, the less clarity you're going to have, the more distortion. And so, I mean, I shoot a mile on 15 power. You don't need a lot of power if you have good quality glass. So what he's saying is ridiculous. I mean, it is that dumb. I mean, all the stuff he said is dumb. But if you look at this one, that changes it. It's easy.
And if people that are doing these things, if you think that you're fooling the experienced shooting world out here, you're only kidding yourself. You're lying to us, and you're lying to yourself.
Wow. That is quite a video. And honestly, it's quite amazing that anybody believes anything that comes out of that man's mouth. I mean, you can see from this breakdown that there is a lot that he got wrong. And very basic stuff that's easy to prove wrong. He clearly, I mean, the guy's a dinosaur. He's trying to stay relevant. I'm pretty sure most of this is just that. He's trying to get attention. He's trying to stay relevant. The problem is he's being left in the dirt. He's not out there doing any major things. He's got his little company. He makes rifles. But there are major advances from the top guys in the industry. You got guys like Brian Litz, the top ballistic expert in the world. He's putting out information. You got guys from special operations teaching. You've got famous snipers teaching. You got top competition shooters. You got guys like Justin Watts, Robert Brantley, Jim Gilland, who is a famous sniper, Steve Suttles, Bobby Whittington. You got all these top guys in this field doing amazing things. Brian Litz. You got good animal data from guys like Nathan Foster on the terminal ballistic side. I mean, there is so much knowledge that people can get. It's not like the old days. It used to be that you had to be in certain circles in order to learn that stuff. That's not the case anymore. The advances in technology make old sniper rifles look like toys. I mean, what you can do today, the average shooter is far more lethal than they've ever been. And that's a good thing. A lot of guys try to say, like this guy, that, oh, you shouldn't do that. It's not fair to the animals. It is absolutely fair to the animals. Our goal is a quick, clean kill because ultimately we're taking that animal's life, and that's something we got to respect. And so that's something that the more effective we can be, the quicker the death. And they want to try to say, oh, well, you have to make it hard on yourself, or, you know, you should do this, you should do that. It's not about trying to make it hard on yourself. It's about the animal. your ultimate goal, it's going to be hard enough no matter what. If you're in elk country, there's no such thing as an easy elk hunt. You've got to get in where they're at. You've got to find them. You got to take your shot, and you got to pack them out. There's a lot of work. But getting more lethal, therefore getting better bullets and arrows and everything, that is only ensuring that that animal is respected and put down quickly. I do high shoulder shots with great bullets and great guns because that animal is dead instantly. It has no idea it was shot. It is literally lights out, and that's the way it should be. I take great pains, and so do others, in order to do that, to avoid ever wounding an animal, not recovering it, getting bullet failures. We utilize the best we can to get the best results. So stuff like this, that doesn't help anybody. That's another hunter stabbing another hunter in the back. That is doing nothing but giving ammunition to the anti-hunters, which is going to screw us. But to be that selfish and lie blatantly while trying to call everybody else liars, I mean, I don't get it. I do not understand that type of mentality. I don't care what you hunt with. That's your business. Now, I'll offer advice and stuff if I see bullets, let's say. If there's good bullets, I'm going to recommend them. If there's bullets that don't perform well or have failures, I'm not going to recommend them. But ultimately, it's up to you what you end up using or how you hunt crossbow, longbow, rifle, short range, long range pistol, whatever you want to use. As long as you're doing what you can to be as effective as possible and train and master that, good for you. This guy, he's not a viable source for information. Honestly, I don't know why so many people actually believe him. I mean, it is so easy to disprove him wrong. Now, I'm going to be continuing these breakdowns. I got some more ballistic gel tests coming up and a lot more, so pay attention. Everybody, enjoy the outdoors, have some fun, get out there this season, spend time with family, get in the outdoors, hunt, practice, master your skills, and just be safe out there. So everybody, happy hunting.
Hope you enjoyed this video, and make sure to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and turn on notification bell so you won't miss out on any future video, and happy hunting.